24th presentation of my barbershop story, Paul Swanson.
My barbershop. Are you ready for memory lane? Okay. I'm Paul Swanson, my barbershop story. We need to go back to the year 1974. It's October. I'm a freshly minted senior in high school, watching television, and my dad comes up and says, "Come on, Paul, we're gonna go sing with the barbershoppers." So I'm like, "We're gonna do what?" My dad, I gotta tell you a little bit about my dad. He, World War II vet. He was in the Army Air Corps. He was stationed in Warrington, England during the war. And they asked him, this was before there was an Air Force, they asked him, "What did you fly?" And he said, "I wisely flew a desk." He was good with money and he was in charge of payroll, so he came back from the war unscathed, married my mother, and became a wholesale furniture sales rep for a company that manufactured dinette sets. Now, he had a nice territory that he was in charge of, pretty much the size of LOL, minus Canada. And one story that he loved to tell is when he's selling to guys that own furniture stores. He's up in Hibbing selling to a guy named Abram Zimmerman. And he's got his catalog all laid out, showing Abe all of his new dinette sets. And he can hear the guitar going on in the background. Oh, no. And he goes, "Who's playing guitar back there?" And Abe goes, "That's my boy Robert. He just saw Buddy Holly at the Armory, and now he wants to be a rock and roll star." Most of you know that Robert Zimmerman did go on to become a rock star. We all know him today as Bob Dylan. So, little 6 degrees of separation there. Anyway, my dad, being a furniture wholesales rep, got to rub shoulders with other wholesales reps. In fact, he was a member of the Minneapolis Furniture Club, and the president of the Minneapolis Furniture Club was one Bud Hurtig. So Bud was constantly, anybody you know Bud, he operates at a rather high energy level. He's, "Come on, Glenn, come on down, you gotta hear my chorus." He directed the Minnetonka Clippers at that time. And my dad said, "Well, I don't sight read." "Doesn't matter. None of my guys know how to sight read. You know, you can hear a tune and you can hear a melody and carry a tune. You're in." So he said, "All right, I'll give it a shot." He didn't want to go alone. "Come on, Paul, we're gonna go sing with the barbershoppers. If you don't like it, you don't have to keep doing it. Just give it a shot." So I did. And I met guys like Dick Treptow, Dick White, Tom Wickenheiser, Ramey Groans, Erwin Martin, Bob Lissett, Lyle Schmerud, Vern Johnson, Vern Miller, Doug Trask, and John Schneider. A lot of these guys weren't that old at the time and had pretty good voices. And, they said, "Well, what part do you want to sing, Paul?" And I said, "Well, Robert Goulet's a good baritone. Maybe I'll sing baritone." Then I started singing barbershop baritone. I'm like, "What in the hell is this?" I heard the tenors singing over there, and next week I was in the tenor section because I thought they were having all the fun. We had more fun after rehearsal because we moved into the kitchen there where they had the pop and the coffee and the cookies, and we were singing tags with the like of Dick Treptow and Erwin Martin, and that's when I rang my first chord, and it's like a tuning fork going off in your loins. And I was hooked on this stuff. I was having more fun than my dad because I had a 17-year-old voice. You know? Then I learned about competition. I go, "We compete? Oh yeah, we compete. Who do we compete against?" "Oh, well, there's a Minneapolis chapter, there's St. Paul, there's Bloomington, there's St. Croix, and we're a member of the 10,000 Lakes Division, and then that's bigger." And I started to get an idea how big this fraternity really was and the levels of competition. I go, "Yeah, let's bring it on, let's compete, you know." My very first 10,000 Lakes Division competition was some high school somewhere. The MC was Norm DiCarlo, and I'll never forget, I'd never seen banter between an MC and a crowd like this before. For example, Norm is up there with his 3x5 cards and he says, does anybody know where the afterglow is tonight? And this is when we had afterglows for divisional contests. And he says, well, luckily I know where it is. And he took the card and put it in his pocket. And someone from the crowd yelled, hey, Norm, take off your hat. We'll follow you. Now, Norm had a perfectly bald head. And he is often quoted as saying, God made only so many perfect heads and the rest he covered with hair. So that's Norm DeCarlo. And the other interesting thing that happened at that contest was I was introduced to a quartet called the Harmony Galore 4. Treptow did not tell me he was in a quartet. He just showed up on stage with these three other guys, and I had no clue who these three guys were. Turns out they're from the Minneapolis chapter. So you can make a quartet from multiple chapters? That was quite a concept. And they did the most interesting thing I'd ever seen. Don Nelson, the tenor, played straight man to the remaining trio, which pretended to be a Victrola record player. Oh, yeah. The name of the song was Old Phonograph Records, and the tag went so long ago, and they got into this skipping mode where it went so long ago, and Don is like, kicked the trio, pretended, and they were like, oh, and he had to wind it up, and they went into this chord, and it just blew me away. This is when I realized that this is not just singing, it's performance art. And from then on, Harmony Galore 4 was my favorite quartet. Well, this is the spring of '75. Then spring became the summer. And Bud comes up in front of the chorus and says, well, you know, we got an international competition coming up. We got another quartet that's going to be competing, and please welcome the Happiness Emporium. And I'm like, well, who are these guys? I hope they're as good as the Harmony Galore 4. These guys walked on stage, or walked in front of the chorus with so much swagger. I couldn't believe it. They're wearing blue suits, turquoise suits with matching turquoise shoes. How does that even happen? I'm like, wow. So they sang their hometown set, and remember the guy from the Maxell commercial where his hair's blown back and the tie's flying back? That was me. That was me sitting in the front row. So, not because they were loud, because they were that good. And I go, these guys are better than the Harmony Galore. Now, I had never heard the championship quartet, so I had nothing to compare them to. All I knew is they were really good. And so time goes on, and of course they go and they do very well. In fact, they win first place. And there's no internet. You can't just go online and find out what's going on. It's all word of mouth. Phones start ringing that Sunday morning. And we got a phone call from Bud Hurtig's wife, Jane Hurtig, saying, hey, you know, the Happiness won it. Now, I'm a 17-year-old kid, and I did something Saturday night, and I was sleeping it off up in my bedroom upstairs. I'll never forget my mother. Paul! What? The Happiness won it! What? I said the Happiness won it! Well, now I'm awake. I grab my robe, I run downstairs, and I go, Mom, did you just say they won it? Like first place? Yes. Like gold medals? Yes! Yes. All of a sudden I'm like, what are we gonna do? We gotta do something. We can't just sit here. We can't just sit here. We get back on the phone with Jane, and we find out what flight they're coming in on. Now, it's 1975. You can go to the airport and park for $6 in short-term parking. You can go through security without a ticket and meet people at the gateway. Well, there are about 50 of us there doing this. Some people had signs, smiley faces. The local news crew was there with their cameras and everything. And as soon as they came off the jet, we exploded, you know, wow. And I think Bob Spahn was one of the first off. Pretty soon we're like, song, 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 song. We made these guys sing a song right there at the gate. They sang My Lady Loves to Dance, and the news crew got it. It was on the news that night. I remember looking at the news and saying, I was there. I was right there. So, fun time to be a barbershopper. the happiness kind of galvanized quartet singing in the Twin City area. And the fun kept going because we had to have an appreciation dinner for him, or appreciation party. It was at some hotel, and the word got out, we're gonna all get together and celebrate this win. I can still remember people coming from all over the district to this party, and the MC at one point said, you know, the happiness come from a long line of quartetting, and we want to know if there's anybody here from these previous quartets. Let's bring them up on stage. Anybody from the Hut 4, come on up, go up on stage. Anybody from the Jiminy Crickets, come on up, get up on stage. Let's hear a song from these guys. And they made them sing Goodbye My Coney Island Babe. That's the first time I'd ever heard that song. And they did a very good job. After that, the fun still continues. The big wigs of the Twin City areas said, you know, we gotta keep this going because everybody's into quartetting right now. And they put together a non-sanctioned competition called the Twin Cities Quartet Jamboree. And the only requirement was that you could not be in a registered quartet. So I immediately put together a quartet with 3 guys from the Minnetonka chapter. Vern Johnson on lead, Erwin Martin on bass, Bob Lissett on baritone. And we sang Sweet and Lovely. And we sang the snot out of it. And apparently the judges liked it because we took first place. And one of the judges on the judging panel was Rod Johnson. Now I remember he gave us a nice score, and he's a man of few words. He just wrote down, "You said something," period. That was Rod. So thank you, Rod Johnson, for that score. And I should have formed a quartet with those guys, but I wanted to be in a quartet with 3 guys my own age. So I started a quartet with 3 guys from Minneapolis, because that seemed to be the formula. And we called ourselves the 1984, and we really didn't go anywhere. We didn't. But I learned a lot from that quartet. Before you start a quartet, you might want to ask some questions. And just because you can ring a chord doesn't mean you should buy matching socks. Ask the question, do you have mutual practice schedules? Do you have the same goals in mind? Do you know each other well enough to know that you like each other? So, live and learn. And the other thing I wanted to do was to go to an international competition. Now, I couldn't see the Happiness win because I had already won, but I sure as heck could go watch them crown the next champs. So I went to California. It was held in San Francisco, and it was held at the Cow Palace. My parents bought me a ticket out there. I stayed at my uncle's place up in San Rafael. He dropped me off at the hotel headquarters in San Francisco. And as soon as I walk through there, I can hear the harmony going on, the quartetting, and I'm like, wow, this is the right place. And I'm wandering through there, and I see the Harmony Marketplace. I see all this barbershop paraphernalia, and I'm flipping through the vinyl records. And then I look to my right, and over there, sitting in a chair, right over there, is none other than Bert Mustin.
Oh yeah.
I go, I know that guy. I've seen him a million times on television. First time I'd ever seen a celebrity. I walk up to Bert. You'd think I'd ask something probing like, hey Bert, what quartets were you in? You know, Bert, I just saw you on the Brady Bunch, a couple weeks ago. Well, Florence Henderson, she's such a fine gal. Other people are gathered around Bert and wanted to ask him questions too. But it was a good time to see Bert at that point because he's there at the tender age of 92, and we lost him like 6 months later in '77. If he had made it 2 more weeks, he would have been 93. So, but I got some fun facts about Bert here. Born in 1884, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Graduated from military college in 1903 with civil engineering degree. Worked as an engineer, but decided to go into sales. He sold mostly cars, Lincolns and Mercurys, until World War II broke out when they had to start building something else. Then he worked as a fiscal agent for the Better Business Bureau and the Chamber of Commerce. In 1921, did amateur acting and performing and became the announcer for a variety show broadcast in Pittsburgh's KDKA radio station. Now here's an interesting fact. In 1925, he made his first trip to California to compete in a barbershop quartet competition held in San Francisco. Now we didn't even have a society until '39, so I don't know what that could have been. Maybe this is a David Wright question, I don't know. He retired before he started his acting career. So he moved to Tucson, Arizona. Director William Ryer saw him there on a stage production of the detective story. Ryer cast him in the 1951 film version of the detective story, and Mustin's second career took off. He was 67 years old when he started his second career, and he was in over 192 credits of film and television. Burt Mustin, good guy, Barbershop. Well, I was 3 years with the Minnetonka chapter, 3 annual shows, 3 headliners, the Suntones, Boston Common, Most Happy Fellows. After that, I started running out of money. There was no Harmony Foundation back then. I had to quit to focus on my college studies. Eventually, I got a job out in California as a field service engineer for Beckman. I went to a chapter meeting out in California for the Peninsulaires. It didn't take for some reason. My musical outlook became piano playing, and I was in a rock and roll group, cover band called Rhythm Nights. We did everything from Jerry Lee to Shania Twain. In 2005, California got to be too expensive for me. I missed the 4 seasons. I came back and I joined the Commodores in 2008. In 2012, I started a quartet called Hot Commodity with Dave Spidell, Tony Mason, Ben Wangard. We were the 2013 10,000 Lakes Novice Champs. We would have been the 2013 District Novice Champs, but those rascals, Cordial Combat, stole both District and Novice, so we didn't get it at that point. You only get 1 shot at it. What are you going to do? We sang 4 years together and had many fun gigs. We celebrated Como's Conservatory's 100th anniversary, General Mills' 150th anniversary at the Guthrie. We got to celebrate that one with him. And we also sang at the State Fair. We didn't just show up at the State Fair and start singing. We actually got hired by the State Fair. Just want to make that point. Program director for 2 years with the Commodores. Treasurer and webmaster for the Northern Pines Harmony Brigade for the first 4 years. I am now the current webmaster for the Commodores, and currently a member of the Rockin' Doors with Andy Richards, Matt Richards, and Dan Cole there. And, oh yeah, I'm a member of the Friday Lunch Bunch too. A lot of you guys are my heroes. I love breaking bread with you guys on Thursday, and that's my barbershop story. Yeah.